Welcome back to another video. In this video, we will see how to use provider in our Flutter app. So provider is one of the state management techniques. So generally we use set state to update items, update data in our Flutter app, right? So the issue with set state that is it renders the entire screen when we use set state. But when we use provider, we can just render the particular area where we want to update the data. So and provider has many other use cases which we'll look into this video. So I have created a demo project already. So the main.dot contains the standard code template. From the home I'm calling add items, which is my UI. So basically we're going to create a shopping list. Right, in this add items class, I have a app bar, and actions I am displaying the total items in cart. So we will create a shopping list, and the body will this body I am using list view builder to build 10 items, which has a button. So our task is when we add this button, this number should get updated without using set state. So we have to maintain a state where I have created a folder here, state, and cart dot dot is the cart file. So we'll store all our items. Whenever we add items to cart, this is where it will get stored. And I have created two other functions, which is to get total items, the total count, and to add the item, right? So this is my standard template which I have already created. So to let's move into provider now. So you can just go to pub.dev, search for provider, copy this provider package, and paste it in your pubsec.yaml, which I've already done, right? So before moving into the concept, I'll just explain you using a simple diagram. So we have our cart data dot. So here we will be adding our cart items. So this is our state, and we have our add items class, which is our UI. So our task is to establish a connection between this UI and state so that we can communicate and interchange data between these two class, UI and state. So for that we will create a pipeline, but this pipeline will be attached to state and the parent class of this UI. So my app, in this case, my app is the parent class of this UI. So we will establish a connection between a pipeline between state and parent class of this uh, UI. In this case, my app is the parent class, but generally in all the projects, my app will be the parent class for all the other widgets, right? So generally it's a good idea to establish a connection between state and my app for all the state models. So that's what we are going to do here. So what we'll do is we'll go to our main.dot. So this is my app class. So I'll first create an entry point for my pipeline. So I'll just give change notifier provider, right? So this change notifier provider is my entry point of the pipeline. So this contains a create attribute. So for this create attribute, we'll pass a context, and we will have to return the state. Here the state is cart, so we'll just return the state to this, and it has another property called child. To this child we will pass our material app, and we have to close this entry point pipeline. So this pipeline is a term which I am using for you to understand better. So this change notifier provider is the entry point of the pipeline, and we have to close this pipeline, right? So change notifier provider is the entry point of the pipeline, and we have the exit point of the pipeline, right? So for that, what we'll do is we'll go to our state, and we will just add with notifier with change notifier. So this establish a connection between state and our parent class of the UI. Okay, so the pipeline is fixed. Now we can exchange data between all the classes all the subclasses, all the children classes of my app. In this case, add items is the children class of my app, right? So now we can exchange data between these classes and state. So let's first consume data. Let's first get data from this state. So we'll try to get the data from this. We'll get we'll try to get the count of this items in our UI. So this is where we are going to get the count. So for that, what we'll do is we'll use a consumer class. So now this consumer class has a builder. So this builder will have to pass context, we'll get the data, and we have a child. Let's not dive deep into this. So let's just understand the syntax as it is. And we have to return whatever the widget we are going to pass. So we'll just cut this text and we'll pass it inside this. And this consumer will have to pass a generic. We'll have to say what we are consuming. We are consuming from the cart, right? So we'll just give the generic there. And instead of this 0 which we have statically typed, here we can pass the count. So from this data, from this variable, we can access all the methods of this state. So that's what we'll do now. So data dot get total items. So we'll get total items from the cart using this consumer. So I'll just hot restart it, or hot restart it, and we can see that we are getting the standard 0. So let's try to add some items here and see if the number changes. So we can see the count, it is we can see the count is 1 here because we have one item in the cart. So now we'll delete this, and we'll come back to our previous state. So we have 0 here. So now our task is, whenever we click this button, this number, the card should get added. So we are consuming a data. Now we have to put back data through that pipeline, right? So for that we will use provider, and inside this button, so whenever this button is pressed, we'll have to send data, right? So we'll use provider dot of, and we'll use generic, which is our state. Don't get too confused with the syntax, just understand the syntax as it is, use the syntax as it is. We'll have to pass the context, and for the listen we'll have to give it false, and then from here we can pass the methods of the cart state, of the cart class. So we'll have to add item, right? This add item is the method of cart, so we'll have to pass the item here. So inside this we will pass our item name as it is, and that's it. So whenever we press the button, this value will get added to our total item list. So let's see if this works. So now when we are adding this button, nothing changes, it's 0, because we are sending the data, we are passing the data to the pipeline, but nobody is getting back the data. So for that we'll have to notify the pipeline that something has been changed. So there is one keyword which we'll use here. So whenever we are adding item, we'll have to notify the pipeline that something is changed, right? So for that we'll use notify listener. So whenever we are adding item, we'll have to tell the pipeline that something is changed. Only then the consumer will consume it again. So now we will see how it works. So now when we add our cart, some data is going through that pipeline, and we are telling the pipeline that something has been changed. Then this consumer go again from the pipeline and get the data back again. So one item I have added to the cart, again I'm adding some other item, and so on. So that's how we use provider to update data, to handle data for state management. I hope you understood this concept clearly. So now we had one state, and we are establishing a pipeline to my app, right? What if, so so as okay, so this is another explanation. if we have another item, another class here, so since we are establishing connection between my app and this state, we can use this state data in anywhere in our children class. So but what if there is another class, another state? So what if there is another state which we have to establish a pipeline between my app and this new class? Because we already have one pipeline, right? So we have to establish another pipeline. So what if we have cases like that where we have to add multiple pipelines to our my app? So I'll just create another state here. Let's say this is wish list dot dot. So I'll just create a wish list with change notifier, and this will contain my string list, just for example purpose. So now I have another state here. I have to add a pipeline to main dot dot, but I already have a pipeline here, right? So now we'll have to do a small change to this code. So now when we want to add multiple pipelines, then we'll use multi provider widget, and inside this we have a provider attribute. So for that we will pass a list, and inside list first we can pass one pipeline, then we can create another pipeline of wish list, and we have to close this bracket carefully. So when you want multiple pipelines, you can use provider, but if you have just one pipeline, you can use uh, one change notifier directly. It's not necessary that you have to add pipelines to my app only. You have to add pipeline to the parent class of the UI, but it is generally a good idea to add it in my app itself, because you can access the state from anywhere in the project. So it will work the same. So there will be no change in your card state and the UI. Okay, that was, so I have covered the entire concept of provider. I'll just end it with one more tip. This provider is not just for putting data. You can consume data from this as well. Let's try to replace this consumer using our provider itself. So I'll copy my text, and instead of this data dot items, what I'll do is I'll use my, here I will add int total items, and I'll use my provider here, get total items, right? And here you can pass total item from here. So instead of consumer, you can use directly provider itself to get the total items to call the other functions. But the only difference is here we'll have to change false for listen to true. What it means is, whenever notify listener is called, if this is false, this will not listen to that data. But when this notify listeners is called, and if this is true, this will get an alert message that something has changed. Run this code again. So you can see that it works similar way. But if I give false, so if I give false, when even if I add, if I press the button, even if I add data to state, nothing is being fetched back. So that's the only difference between true and false, that it listens to changes in the state. So I hope that, I'm sure if you are a beginner, this would be slightly difficult, but if you practice it once or twice, you will be able to understand, and you will be able to manage state in a much more efficient manner. And I hope this video gave you a little bit of idea, and you're able to understand provider now. So that was it, and see you in the next video.